Welcome to the EU Life Information Day 2020. My name is Giulia Carboni. I'm a project advisor of the LIFE program, the EU's funding instrument for the environment and climate action. You are more than 3,000 watching us today, scattered all around Europe. It is a great pleasure for me to welcome you to Brussels at the Executive Agency for Small and Medium Enterprises of the European Commission. Right. This is not a commission building and neither a fancy conference room. I'm obviously at home, like most of you. I sincerely hope you're doing well. The COVID-19 pandemic affected heavily our daily lives, and for some, it's worse than for others. But one of the main messages of today from the LIFE program to you is that we know it. We are all on the same boat, and we have worked hard to implement a set of measures which will make your application within the Core and Call 2020 easier and smoother. This virtual conference is a part of it. I will soon give the floor to my colleagues who will explain you more in details the call. My role here is to guide you through the morning and share a few technical details. First, the agenda. Angelo Salsi, head of the unit of the LIFE unit in EASMA, will tell us what is LIFE and share with us the highlights for the LIFE Call 2020. Maja Mikosinska, head of sector Nature and Biodiversity, will guide you through the application process. But we know what you really want to know is how to apply successfully. How does that work? For this, we have Fabio Leone, head of sector Environment and Resource Efficiency, who will share his best tips, and Anne Vermalen, head of sector LIFE in the finance unit. She will guide you through the finance labyrinths of life. Then afterwards, in approximately 1 hour time from now, we'll take a break. You'll have the opportunity to enjoy LIFE by watching some of the special moments, getting a better idea of what the program does, and probably the desire of becoming soon a part of the LIFE family. Once back, our cherry on the cake, the question and answer session, or better said, the answer session. You will have the possibility to ask questions all along the presentations. We will use the break to allocate them among us, and we'll come back to you after 15 minutes with all the answers we have. So, how to ask those questions? That's very easy. You can do it on your computer or on your mobile. Why, you just go to Slido, www.slide.do, download and open the Slido app, or just use it on your browser. Enter the event code, #EULive2020, and there you can ask your question, and most importantly, vote for your favorite questions. This is really important. As I said, you're more than 3,000. Help us by checking first the questions already asked, and if they match your interest, just like them. We will give priority to the question with the most likes. But now let's go to the information you are all waiting for. I'll give the floor to Angelo Salsi to tell us what is LIFE and what are the novelties of this call for application 2020. Angelo, the floor is yours.
So thank you very much, Giulia. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's my task to give you a brief introduction about LIFE. This is obviously not for the people who are already acquainted with this program, but for those that it's the first time that maybe they join us, and they might be interested in knowing a little bit more about the basics of this program. And then the second part of my presentation is about the novelties for this particular call, especially in those times we are living into. So apologies for those that know everything about LIFE. I will try to be as brief as possible about the generics of this program. So what is LIFE? The first thing is to understand a bit the breadth of this program. You have to think that it's a program that is one of the oldest that we run in the European Union, and in particular it was born in May 1992. So we've been around for quite a while, and we had the pleasure of financing more than 5,000 projects in all possible fields that you can expect in the area of environment and climate change, nature and biodiversity, all other environmental sectors, waste, noise, circular economy, water, and so on, all the climate actions, and the governance and information both under climate and under environment. So already there you have a global picture of how this rather little program in budgetary terms because of its very long existence, has been able to build up such a solid foundation of thousands of projects. We do finance currently quite a number of types of projects. What is the most common one, and probably the one for which you have been joining today, are what we call the traditional projects. But we also have other types of projects. We have capacity building projects. These are just aimed at national authorities capacity building in the area of the LIFE program, so what we call the LIFE National Contact Points. We have integrated project, which is projects which are strategic, large-scale projects for the implementation of plans and strategies, specific plans and strategies, and they are associated with mini projects, which we call technical assistance, which are small projects helping the setup of these integrated projects. We have NGO operating grants, so we issue quite a number of operating grants for European NGOs, so umbrella NGOs normally, to cater for part of their operating costs. We have financial instruments. We have two financial instruments under LIFE that give out loans through the European Bank of Investments. And we have preparatory projects, which are starting from a top-down approach. We design the terms of reference, and these projects respond to very specific needs in policy terms. And we did have some pilot projects a few years ago in the area of the European Solidarity Corps. So let's concentrate ourselves on traditional projects. For whom are these projects? Any legal persons that is registered in the EU. So we only exclude natural persons. For what? We have 6 priority areas. I will bring you through rapidly in the next slides. We have for each of these priority areas, we have either priorities or project topics. In reality, these are synonyms of the same entity. So priorities that we set in what we call the LIFE multi-annual work program, a document that covers the management of the program for 4 years at the beginning and now for 3 years until the end of its 7 years duration. And the most important thing I want to call your attention to is how this project can be set up, because this is the classical thing that people are interested into is, can I do the project alone? Do I need partners in other member states? Must the project be as big as this or as long as that? The beauty of LIFE is that you design the project the way you want, the way it's best fit to the solution that you want to adopt. You want to be alone, you are alone. You want to be 60 partners in the project, you are 60 partners. You want to design a small project, you design a small project, say 800,000 euros, €1 million. You want to design a large project, 20, 30 million euros, you design it big. You want it short, 2 years, be my guest. You want it long, 10 years, just be my guest as well. So concentrate on this, because this is one of the branding elements of the LIFE program. It's total flexibility and the large element of bottom-up. So your ideas are the ideas that count. Then the co-founding rate. There we are, I must admit, a bit on the low side. We are not big financiers in percentage terms. So if you are coming for money and the percentage of co-financing from the European Union is the only element that you care about, LIFE is probably not the place for you. But if you really have a sense of ownership of your project and you think that LIFE is the best place to have it done, and with those elements of flexibility I told you before, we can give you up to 55% for most of the projects. In the case of nature and biodiversity project, we can give you up to 60%, and in certain special conditions, when you deal with priority habitats or species, we can go up to 75%. So don't dream about the 80, 90, 100% co-financing that you might receive in other programs. The priority areas of LIFE. So I told you there are 6, quite easy to understand. You have 2 sub-programs in LIFE. The sub-program for environment, which is designed in 3 priority areas: environment and resource efficiency, nature and biodiversity. So if you want, I can start with nature and biodiversity, and then environment and resource efficiency is everything else under environment that is not covered by nature and biodiversity. And then you have a component which is dedicated for both for nature and biodiversity and the remaining part of environment. is dedicated to governance and information projects. Same situation, specular image under climate action, the other sub-program, where you have what we call climate change mitigation project, climate change adaptation project, and again, climate change governance and information. So it's quite easy. The codes that you see beside it, CCM, CCA, GIC, these are just short coding that allow us later on to identify rapidly the type of project because they appear in the number, the unique number that is given to each and every proposal. So this was a very, very fast walk through the LIFE program. Obviously, later you will have possibility to ask questions, so don't fear asking. There is no stupid question, as usually we say. So now let's go to the call 2020, the reason why you're here. So there are novelties for this call. The first novelty that everyone is suffering under is that we have the COVID crisis with us. So in one way or another, just like everybody else, so not only we were trying to contribute to the societal effort in trying to control the pandemic, also via our own personal behaviors, but we also had to look at our program and see whether we could rapidly do something to cater for the problems that this pandemic is generating also in the implementation of the LIFE program. The first thing is that we looked at the deadlines and we said, okay, you know, everyone is having difficulty. Let's extend every single deadline by at least 1 month. And this we have done compared to the originally foreseen. Let's hope that it will be enough. If the situation really persists for a very long time, we will look at it again. We saw that clearly there is, as a fallout product of the pandemics, we're all talking about the economic crisis because our economy is sort of half halted. So we reckon that a number of entities might have serious cash flow problems. So we said, how can we try at least to mitigate partially this? And we looked at the way we pay normally projects, and we said, okay, let's increase the first pre-financing. So the first pre-financing payment will be 10% higher than what we normally did during the last 6 years, providing more cash upfront to every project that passes. We included a possibility to give grants to third parties, and I will be a bit more explicit in a follow-up slide. We have included a new narrative on startups. Again, more details in a slide coming. Then we have deleted the obligation to run call for tenders for private entities when they were tendering more than 139,000 euros. My colleague Anne Vermalen later will explain you in more details about this. We have increased the flexibility for the 2% rule that applies to public authorities. And again, Anne will be more explicit on that. We have included the possibility for every project and every beneficiary of benefiting of the no depreciation in case if goods that are purchased during the project will be used after the project for the same purpose. And Anne will explain you also on this. Priorities and topics remains because we cannot change the multi-annual program, but we have included in our narrative a special text inviting the people to think about their project in connection with the pandemics and the problem that it's generating or highlighting. And their projects could be, then they could consider within the project proposal shaping whether any of the element of the project could possibly contribute to future pandemics or to solve part of the problems that were highlighted during this crisis. Even though we all know that life is not designed exactly to address these kind of health issues. Last but not least, we have added a possibility for everyone that wants, and this is the first time in 27 years of existence of this program, to address us through bilateral chats, one-to-one, with all my project advisors, or all the colleagues in the unit in EASME, to discuss about possible project proposals. So this is an enhanced, if you want, support and help for all project applicants that we have never done before. Later you will receive also some indication about that. Now, a few more details about a couple of the novelties. The grant to third parties. We have always been asked to give a easier way of supporting local initiatives or small initiatives by very small groups. These are kind of initiatives that could be fundamental or certainly very much contributing to the objective of each of our projects. Think about nature and biodiversity, climate project. But the people that are responsible for carrying out these initiatives will not be adaptable, if you want, to the straitjacket that is imposed by our administration. So they cannot, let's say, act or impersonate the classical associated beneficiary or partner, as we call it in one of our projects. But certainly their initiatives would be nice to have. So we are giving the possibility to every beneficiary in a project to hand out grants in turn. So they receive a grant from us. They could grant part of that money to small groups, non-profit organizations, local authorities, or citizens groups, that provided that the action these people want to carry out will contribute to the project itself. We've set a maximum. You can spend a maximum of 100,000 euros for a project in these grants to third parties, and a maximum per initiative, so per grant, which is 20,000 euros. For integrated project, the total goes up to 200,000 euros during the time of the project. So we're not talking about big money, but we're talking about very interesting local initiatives or small initiatives. The only thing we ask you is that at the level of the proposal, you explain us that you want to use it, that you have a rationale and you expect a certain level of results from these local initiatives, how you will manage the process. I mean, what kind of criteria you will be basing your selection upon, and also what kind of activities these third parties may receive financial support for. Then the support to startups. This is nothing really new. It's not a new rule. It's simply a new narrative. The classical situation of the startup, the way we imagine it, so the two guys that come out from the university and have a great idea. The next step is what? They go into an incubator to build up their shoulders, the financial capacity, and so on and so on. But then they have to team up with some bigger partners. So what is best? What is a better place than a live project itself? So you can imagine easily the situation where you have a medium enterprise that teams up with a classical startup. What happens? Well, the medium enterprise is the applicant, so the coordinating beneficiary. The startup is an associated beneficiary. The startups gets the possibility of teaming up in a real industrial partnership with this bigger company, and they get the possibility of developing their know-how to the level that it becomes a real business. On the other side, the medium enterprise gets the possibility of having access to that knowledge, which is what they wanted, and by the way, almost completely de-risked by us, because we intervene financially, or at least limiting the risk associated. So we hope that many people will buy into this concept and that we will see a lot of projects where startups are teamed up with bigger entities. I want to remind you a couple of the novelties that we already had last year and on which we called your attention because they are still very much valid. It's nothing new, it's not connected to COVID in any way, but still. Private land conservation. This is extremely important for nature and biodiversity in particular. We have learned from many other countries in the world that protecting private land by way of engaging the private owners, meaning we don't buy the land out of the hands of the private owners, or we don't simply compensate the private owners for something, but we engage them into the active conservation of this land, is a very powerful tool. And we want the people that want to carry out projects and that would or could possibly use this particular facility to consider this kind of approach also in the European Union. Invertebrates, I mean, the lesser visible part of our biodiversity is largely composed by animals, by species that either we don't care about or we even dislike or are a lot less visible than many others. but they compose the largest part of our biodiversity if you take it in terms of taxa. And there we have pollinators, which is a significant priority for the European Union. And we invite really carefully the people to consider that, yes, it's beautiful to work on wolves, bears, turtles, monk seals, and all these kind of beautiful and visible species, but there is a lot of beauty of working also on a lot less visible species, but just as important. And finally, the EU IUCN red lists. It's 8 years that we are making the possibility available to all applicants to propose projects which are not addressing species that are included in the Habitats or the Birds Directive, but they are indeed listed under the red lists, especially the European red lists. And we see that the response is very, very low for the moment. While the number of species which are in those lists and are not covered by the Habitats and Birds Directive, it's very big. So we would invite academia and the world of nature conservation on the ground to consider indeed active conservation of the species under LIFE projects. Let's come to a close. Now, one of the things that I have always heard is that life is complex. Now, let's be fair. Our own life is not so simple as this slide says, especially those times, but still, we've done an incredible efforts in the last few years to reduce the administrative burden of life. And I can tell you that if life is not simple, life as a program, certainly is not complex either. So, and it is the most important thing, very stable in time. So once you've learned how to play the game of life, you can play it again and again because it's always more or less the same thing. Here you find a small list of the things that we have simplified in the few years gone by, but more is certainly coming. Now I leave you the slide for a few seconds so that you can appreciate and the various deadlines and the budget available. So in the first column, you see the priority areas. If you want, climate is all in one single priority area, even though you have climate mitigation, adaptation, and governance and information. While environment, we split it into the 3 priority areas because we have slightly different deadlines. You will get more details about the machinery, about how to make your proposals later on. And here you can see that we are in the last year, so the last call for the present life regulation, but we have more money than ever. So it's still a very good year to consider. Now, the last question is that we have in front of us, it's almost an everyday question, is the coronavirus going to be stronger than the European Green Deal? And now I would invite you to, I know that it's difficult in the present conditions to project yourself beyond tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. But we have to really make this effort. And when we come out from this sort of pandemic's paranoia, and we have a bit of freedom in our brain to start thinking, we don't have to give up on the idea that we have designed a strategy that should completely transform Europe, the so-called European Green Deal. And life is probably the best example, if you want, of implementation of the European Green Deal. So I'm expecting you with tons of proposals, good proposals, because I'm sure that we want to have a different Europe in the near future. Thank you very much for your attention and your patience.
Thanks, Angelo. You see, I told you, we have worked hard to make it easier despite the COVID-19 challenge. And now, stay with us to understand how the application process works. Don't waste time taking screenshots of the detailed slide of our next presenter. I see you already asking for it on Slido. Yes, the presentation will be available afterwards. No worries. I'll leave you in the brilliant company of Maja Mikosinska, Head of Sector Nature and Biodiversity. Maja, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Julia, and good morning and a warm welcome from me as well. I will share with you information on how to prepare and submit your concept note using our online application tool, eProposal. If you consider applying for LIFE funding, you will need to submit your application through eProposal. Once you create your account, you will be able to choose whether you wish to submit your project for climate action or environment subprogram. But please note that there are two different procedures depending on the subprogram that you choose. For subprogram for climate action, we have a one-stage application procedure, which means that you need to prepare only a full proposal that responds well to the 6 award criteria. For environment subprogram, we have a two-stage application procedure, which means that there is one additional step before the submission of the full proposal, and this is submission of a concept note that should reply to 2 award criteria. In my presentation today, I will focus on this first stage, preparation of the concept note. Therefore, the information that will follow is most relevant for those of you who consider presenting a project under one of the 3 priority areas for environment, meaning nature and biodiversity, environment and resource efficiency, and environmental governance and information. I would like to start with my key message of today, which is preparing and submitting concept notes is not very complicated, and we believe it can be done even in those difficult and challenging times. Therefore, I would like to strongly encourage you to consider this opportunity and give it a go. What should the concept note include? We are only asking for the information about the coordinating beneficiary, basic information about their mandate, as well as contact details. If you intend to work with other associated beneficiaries, please name them, explaining as well their role in the project. If your project will be co-financed by another entity and you already know who they are, you may also mention them in the concept note application. We will also ask you to provide some basic information about the environmental problem that you intend to target for environment and governance trends, and description of species, habitats, and biodiversity issues if your project is targeting nature and biodiversity priority area. Then you should outline your project objectives, provide some information on the project actions. Please note that we are not asking you to list all the project actions, just the most important and the most relevant ones. You should also list your expected results as well as impacts of the project. Provide information on the sustainability of your project results, and list the risks and constraints that you expect to face when implementing your projects, together with the mitigation strategy. We also would like to invite you to reflect on the EU added value of the project, which at this stage is understood as the contribution to life priorities and objectives. You should also demonstrate that your project has either pilot or demonstration character, or in case of nature and biodiversity subprogram, best practice character. Last but not least, we will be asking you to submit a budget for your project with only the main budget items and the main budget categories, as well as the distribution of the project costs between the EU contribution, partners-owned contributions, and co-financers. So this is in a nutshell what your concept note should include. What it should not include is maps, pictures, attachments, and any signed commitments and mandates. So that is it. So 10 pages in total. As I mentioned in the beginning, we are not requesting much information from you at this stage. And we truly believe that concept preparation is feasible in these difficult times, especially when we are not requesting any signed commitments. So we are hoping that you will consider applying and presenting your live project idea. I would like to spend some time to share with you some of the common mistakes that we see when we evaluate the concept notes, so that hopefully you can avoid them when preparing yours. What you need to know is that unlike at the full proposal stage, the system will not block your submission of the concept notes, even if you make some mistakes. It will give you warnings, but it will not prevent you from submitting your concept note. This is in order to avoid the situation when 5 minutes before the deadline, you cannot submit your application because there is an error in one of the forms. So, however, some of those mistakes can have a negative impact on the evaluation of your proposal. So it is important that you are aware of them and you avoid them. So the first mistake that you should be aware of is only relevant for those of you who consider applying for nature and biodiversity priority area. In the tab Actions and Means Involved, you will be asked the question whether at least 25% of your eligible project costs will be dedicated to concrete conservation actions. We do not calculate this percentage at this stage ourselves. We only ask you to make a declaration. And it is very important that you choose yes. Should you choose no, most likely it will lead to the rejection of your concept note. Please note that there are two exceptions to the 25% rule, and these concern the projects that either aim at the designation of the marine sites or what we call Article 11 projects. So the projects that support development of the surveillance of the conservation status of natural habitats and species covered by the Birds and Habitats Directives in the sense of Article 11 of the Habitats Directive. So if your project falls in one of these two exceptions, also please choose yes in this tab. Most of the problems that we see with the concept notes concern, however, the budget and the budget construction. So first of all, please do not forget to complete your budget. You will find the budget forms under Reports tab, R1 Budget, and once you click, you will be directed to this form. The most important thing here is to correctly understand the difference between the total costs and eligible costs. It is important to bear in mind that the total costs need to be equal or higher than eligible costs, never other way around. Another very important field in this form is this field, requested EU contribution. This is an amount that you are requesting from LIFE program to support your project. It is a percentage of a total eligible costs. And as it was mentioned in one of the earlier presentations, you now know that this percentage for environment and resource efficiency cannot be higher than 55%. For nature, it cannot be higher than 60%, in some cases 75%. So it is very important to understand the relationship between those three fields that are circled here and make sure that the amounts are correct, because the EU requested contribution is one field that you will be able to modify only very slightly with 10% should you be invited to stage 2. The percentages that you see here are calculated automatically by the system, so you don't need to worry about the calculations, but you have to make sure that the ones that are circled red are correct and fall within the limits that I have just discussed. When preparing your concept note, you should be aware that you can modify it and validate it and resubmit it as many times as you need until the deadline that is set in the application guidelines. But please remember that each subsequent submission overrides the previously submitted version. And the earlier versions are not archived, so they are not accessible to you anymore, should you introduce the changes. To conclude my presentation, I would like to spend some time on the evaluation of the concept note so that you can understand better what are the elements that we are looking for when we read and evaluate your concept note. There are several sets of the criteria that need to be met. The most important ones are the eligibility and the award criteria. The eligibility criteria are rather straightforward. They are the same for the concept notes as they are for full proposals. And I strongly encourage you to look into our evaluation guides where they are listed. I would like to, however, focus on the award criteria because these are the ones that you need to meet very well in order to be invited to present your full proposal. We have two criteria, overall quality of the proposal and overall EU added value. What do we look for when we consider overall quality of the proposal? We look first of all at the clarity of the proposals, feasibility of your project, and indicative value for money. What does it mean in more detail? Well, if we think of the clarity of the proposal, we will look at the pre-operational context, which has to be described well and in detail. In particular, your environmental problems and threats need to be clearly identified. There has to be a clear logical link between problems, threats targeted by the project, and the objectives and the proposed actions. And you should strive to quantify and describe well your main actions as well as expected results. To allow us the evaluation of your project feasibility, please describe how, where, when, and by whom each of the main actions will be undertaken. Please also indicate what are the indicative means that are necessary for the implementation of the project. We will be also looking at the technical means and competencies, as well as the construction of your project partnership to evaluate the feasibility of the projects. We will also consider the potential difficulties that you have identified and whether there is a realistic mitigation strategy in your concept note. As for the value for money, your project should represent a good value for money, which is at this stage understood as the overall indicative investment and whether it is reasonable in view of the expected impacts and results. As for the overall EU added value, we are looking here mostly for the project contribution to the life priorities, the expected impact of your project, and sustainability of your project results. So your concept note has to first of all demonstrate how your project contributes to life priorities and one or the several specific objectives of the life program. The extent and the quality of this contribution is what we will be looking for when evaluating your concept note. The project expected impact is understood as the extent and the quality of the contribution to the implementation, updating, and development of the European Union environmental policy and legislation, and but also the environmental benefits that your project will deliver, which should be concrete, realistic, and quantified. The sustainability of the project results in the medium and long term is understood as the capacity of the beneficiaries or other entities to maintain them after the project implementation. So the concept notes should sufficiently describe how this continuation of the necessary actions will take place, who will be responsible for that at the end of the project, and also whether some financial resources will be necessary, and if so, how this will be ensured. Transfer and replication are also considered part of the sustainability. So these are the requirements that your concept notes should meet in order to be admitted to stage 2. If your proposal is admitted to stage 2, you will be notified in e-proposal and you will have access to your full application. You will be then able to work on your full application, but you will not have to start from scratch. The elements of your concept note will be available in the forms that you will see, and you will be able to modify them as necessary. Please note that you can introduce changes to your application, including for the budget, as long as you do not change the main elements of the project, its impact, or put in question our decision to invite you to stage 2 by lowering the impact of your project. And as for the budget, you can make all the changes that you wish, as long as the EU contribution does not increase by more than 10%. So I hope this presentation was useful for you and that you will consider sharing with us your project ideas on a 10-page concept note. I wish you all good luck with your live project applications and send you my best wishes in these challenging times. Thank you.
Thanks, Maya. This was a big amount of useful and detailed information. Any questions? Use Slido, #EULive2020. But once you will have understood all the application procedures, what makes the difference between a good and a bad proposal? what makes a proposal successful? It's the time to find it out. And Fabio Leone, Head of Sector Environment and Resource Efficiency, is ready to talk to you from his home, obviously. Fabio, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Julia, for giving me the floor, actually the virtual floor for this presentation. I'm going to present you how to apply successfully to life. I'm Fabio Leone. I will be helped also by Anne, that will go through more the financial aspects, while myself, I look at more at the technical aspects. So let's start. First of all, it's a series of tips and tricks. We don't have a magic tool to help you to pass the selection, but of course we have a number of suggestions that that you should take into account to be able to successfully apply to life. Now, for you to know, and I think most of you are already aware, this program is faced by significant competition in terms of bidding for the life funds. To give you an idea, we range from 16% or 15% success rate between stage 1 and stage 2 in the governance and information strand. We go up to 20% for the environment resource efficiency strand and 30% for the nature and the climate. More or less, this is an indication of how many proposals are going through the filter of the evaluation and the assessment. So it's competitive. So if you plan to prepare a proposal, you need to plan it and try to do your best in terms of quality of the proposal and presentations. As written in the slide, I mean, poor prepared proposals are not likely to get funded. And of course, don't get discouraged, because I mean, if you don't try, you will never be able to succeed. Now, the basics of applying to life. First of all, you need to go through the basics documents that are behind the life program. I know that, and we can see from the application that many of you don't really look at them properly. So if you need to make an effort, at least please do review carefully the application package that you find on the website, the zip file, and inside of it, the application guide and the guide for evaluation, which contains the criteria against which your proposal will be scored and assessed. Now, of course, you have also the support of your national contact point. Sometimes national contact point do translate these guides in your own language, and also may provide to you some specific support for preparing the proposals. For those unlucky applicants that have been rejected in the past, please don't forget that together with the assessment, you received an evaluation, and with a number of suggestions and weaknesses, strengths and weaknesses of your proposals. Please do care, because you have a major advantage compared to others. Do care to take those into account. Don't cherry pick on just a few of the things that you believe are making your proposal enough. Try to address all the aspects that have been assessed in your previous proposals. This is a key to success for your application. So let's go then into a quick list of main issues that you need to consider when you design the proposal. Again, you will see that these are rather common sense type of suggestions, but you will be surprised how many applicants they don't take this into account. So if you do try to address all these points, you have a pretty high chance of success in your application. First of all, the baseline is the starting point of your presentation. Is what is the problem you're trying to address, and how relevant is this problem in terms of a European context? This is one element that is normally assessed in the criteria 1, it's called, in the concept note, but also in the full proposal. And this is the starting point. If you fail to clearly present your baseline, then it's a sort of foundation of your house. All the rest of the floors will be shaky if you don't put this clearly in written and clearly explained. What we see normally in this case is that for example, applicant tends to present maybe the baseline at the European level. Let's make an example, for example, the situation of municipal solid waste in Europe. Not much is recycled, we have a gap, and we have the objectives to cover this gap. Then they forget to present the baseline of the project itself, unless it's a project that covers all European countries. So don't forget that the explanation of the problem and the situation of the baseline, so the starting point of your project, is in the European context, but also in the local context in which you are going to apply the implement the project. Now, after set up the baseline, you need to set your action to target that problem. Again, it sounds like a common sense. You have a problem, you identified it, and you set in motion a number of actions which would address that problem. Now, this is again assessed in the same criteria, criteria 1, in the concept note and in the full proposal. Please be sure to develop those type of actions in a logical way, in logical steps, and there is a link between one action and the other, and you make it explicit if it's not. Now, very important when talking about implementation is you set the baseline, you set the actions that you put in place. Now you have to explain what you are going to achieve by setting action, by setting all those actions and measures. So you have to present the impacts that you estimate, the benefits for the environment, for the climate, that you are going to achieve by implementing this project. It's important, you have to present these impacts in both qualitative and quantitative terms, and also make an assessment of the likely impacts after the project implementation. So this is part of the applications, and in specific term, it's part of the award criteria 2 in the concept note, and it will be the award criteria 3 in the full proposal. Remember, the life projects are a matter of implementation of solutions and actions to make a change in the environment. So that's a key part that you will need to address in your application. So next, beyond these 3 elements that are really the foundations of setting a good proposal out, you also have to plan well and explain well the sustainability of the project. What this means. Sustainability is not specifically in environment terms, but is to which extent the project, the activities will continue after the project ends. So after our financing, you need to demonstrate that your action is not just one shot, that is the shot that lasts the duration of the project, but you are going to continue the work also after, and maybe, and this is the next point, able to replicate and transfer the results of your project to other sectors, to other conditions. So you are going to multiply and have an effect of a take-up effect of your project even after the project itself. Indeed, we do receive a number of different proposals. It's a rainbow of different proposals with different ambitions. So a project that is aiming to implement the solutions can be presented in a way that replication and transfer of this solution may happen after the project. But there are also other projects which present a proposal, and within the proposal, they also implement during the duration of the project replication and transfer action. So again, in a matter of competition, those projects that comes with us with solid foundations, high potential in terms of replication, actions happening, replication and impacts happening during the project with the stakeholders participating in the project, the relevant ones. Of course, these will be the best scenarios, and they will, let's say, be preferred to others. That doesn't mean that all projects should be like this. But of course, if you come with a project which stops at the end of the project, then the chances are limited compared to others. So I already said, in a way, explained the description of beneficiary involved, which is in the work criteria 1. Now, indeed, we are an European program, and we do expect that projects are coming also in a consortia with different countries, and this is valued, and bonus points are given to those projects that are teaming up with other countries, maybe implementing, replicating, transfer the solutions in one country to another country. So this is taken up. Of course, we do see a number of projects which comes with other countries, but with very limited activities in those countries. So this is also taken into consideration, and the bonus will be limited compared to others in which substantial activities are taking place. So take that into account when you are preparing a project which is considering involving partners from other countries. Now, the next is please, especially for those that apply in the 2 stages approach. So they first submit a short concept note, follow it, then if they are successful to the full proposal. Please do limit your explanations in the concept note to key actions. What we have seen in the past, because the space is limited, so what we have seen in the past is that there is a certain tendency to explain all the actions that you are planning to do, and then these explanations ends up, due to the space limits, into a sort of listing of action without any explanations. This is very weak. Please don't fall in these typical mistakes. Do present, if you have issues of space, your key actions, which are the ones that will be able to achieve the objectives that you have set at the beginning. So, and those actions, please explain well what you're planning to do inside. In this, I mean, in this condition of of course, you have to explain the partnership structure, why you have been taking up a number of partners instead of others. Try to have complementary partners in your partnerships, so each other is supporting and complementing each other on the activities. Avoid redundancy or repetition of stakeholders. Key stakeholders are the same without an explanation. Then the rest you can read through. The slides are again some information about impacts, which you need to gather information on the impacts, and you need to consider the normal steps in any project. If you need some permits, you need to take up the time in the project for these permits. This is often forgotten. Now, to wrap up, which basically I've said, the baseline is an element, is a fundamental information that you need to put there. Don't fall into this trap of listing of actions without any explanation. Just focus on the main actions and describe what you do. You give also an idea. Sometimes we receive a list of actions, some explanations, but we have no clue on the timing. Are the actions taking place 1 week, 1 month, 2 years? And we're pretty lost in understanding the logic or how much efforts you will put into this action compared to others. Again, the space is limited, but there are some tricks to allow you, for example, to give this indication of, you don't need much space to indicate, for example, that your project is 24 months, and then a certain action is from months 1 to 6, so this is a few letters. Do encode, for example, your partnership in with coding, like P1, P2, P3, so you can then refer in the action to these codes, and again, and give an idea of the budget which is involved, because sometimes, again, we don't know the extent in which or the resources that you would put in certain actions. So in the assessment, it's difficult to assess to which extent you have taken that up in consideration. The last slide, it's a sort of summary of what I have already said before. I think in principle you know by now the good design part. So this left part of the slides, these 4 boxes, they have been addressed already by my presentation. What we could do quickly is to see if in the common problems I could show you, present you something more that I have not presented. Yes, for example, in the second box, rationale for project is defined during the project. This is a rather common problem. So for some of the projects, they actually come and present a project in which the extent of the problem or the problem that they want to address is not known. So they set up a project to know if there is a problem. This, I'm afraid, for a live project is a no-go. I mean, you could have within your baseline or within the problem that you are trying to address issues in some part of it that you want to better understand during the execution of the project. This is normal. But a project that starts with not knowing well what is the problem, then it's already a difficult project design. The next point, objective too broad, too many. Yes, another tendency which is more, it's linked probably to this conception that if I'm promising more, I'm selling more. So I promise that in my project I will touch and I will solve a lot of problems. Then my chances are higher. The reality is that we often see projects which they promise too much. Their objectives are too many, and then we lose focus. We also the feasibility is put into question. So please do try to focus on key issues, or you have a single objectives. You try to solve that problem, and don't promise to solve all the problems of the environment in your project, because this is not feasible. Now going to the next to see, let's see. Over optimistic, unrealistic, or lack of quantification. Now, yes, this often we are faced with projects which they do have an action plan during the execution of the project with certain estimated impacts, and then after the project ends, they also have to present sort of future of what they are going to do in the future. And suddenly we discover that after 3 years after the end of the project, there is the explosion of benefits. So to make an example, if during the project, talking back to this municipal solid waste, they will be tackling the recycling of 10 tons of plastic, difficult plastic to recycle, and then they say that after 3 years we will be reaching 100,000 tons of plastic recycled. That please don't do this, because then the expert will start to wonder, how can you from 10 tons jump to 100,000? This doesn't help the success of the project, but will raise more questions. Try to be honest and realistic, on the type of impacts that you expect during and after the project. The next point is, yes, it's rather common. The replication and transfer is not about disseminating results. So if you plan into a project to do your work, maybe even successful, and then present the results of your work around Europe in workshops or technical meetings, This is not replication. This is a dissemination and networking. Replication and transfer is the implementation of your solution somewhere else or in another sector if it's regarding your country. And I think that was it. The last point, I think I already said it. Thank you very much for the attention. I will leave now the floor to Anne Vermaele, which will introduce you to the financial part of being successful in the LIFE project. Thank you.
Thanks, Fabio. I'm sure someone that listened to me and took a few screenshots of your precise tips. As said, the presentation will be available, and it will include even the most informative slides of today. The moment you were all waiting for has arrived. Anne Vermaelen, Head of Sector for Life in the Finance Unit, will share the most important tips from a financial point of view. If you have any doubts, ask us on Slido. Anne, the floor is yours.
Thank you for presenting me. Well, welcome to the financial session in which I will highlight those areas that you may want to keep in mind when preparing your budget. I will focus only on those aspects where we encounter from time to time issues, so I will not go through the entire cost categories. When you establish your project budget, can you please keep in mind that it is always better to read upfront the model grant agreement, articles on award of contracts, subcontracting, eligible costs and affiliated entities, as well as the Annex 10, which deals with financial and administrative guidelines. Both of the documents still need to be published. There is already a current version from the Annex 10 on the website, but it will be updated soon. Next to that, you also have the application guide with at the end all the explanation on the F forms, on the cost categories. And of course, there is also the frequently asked questions section. When you put your budget together, please be realistic, because if you put too little funds inside, you will have problems, of course, when you are awarded a project and when you have then to implement it. If you overestimate your costs, you might get less points in the evaluation because the value for money is not there. So only costs that you incur within the project period should of course be considered, with the exception of audit and final reporting, for which still costs can be included up to 3 months after the end of the project. The financial application forms, those are the ones from F1 till F8. In those, you should put the cost that you will incur in the correct cost category. And please round it to the nearest euro. You don't only put your own cost, but if you're a private entity working with affiliates, you will also have to include the cost of your affiliates. Please note that we will not accept subcontracting between beneficiaries and their affiliated entities, because this is not a correct way of proceeding. Normally, affiliates are added to avoid the conflict of interest, which you would incur if you would immediately contract them for services or for goods. Also avoid internal invoicing. This is of course at the time that you would be awarded a grant, but already take into account that if you want to include costs from departments inside your organization, that you will need to put these costs in the appropriate cost category. Don't include VAT except if you cannot recover it. And then for the public bodies, of course, do not include VAT that is related to activities in which you engage as a public body. For what concerns the personal costs, there only costs for staff that is assigned to the project would be eligible, such as employees or personnel that is assigned under an equivalent appointing act, like for example secondments, and persons that have persons which are natural persons and that have a contract with the beneficiary directly. So persons that are contracted through their own company, they should go under subcontracting, so external assistance. Also make sure when you include staff that you assign tasks to the appropriate staff level. So don't hire a senior expert to do work that can easily be done by a project assistant. Then you will have to have the number of person days that you believe the person should work and the corresponding daily rate. So for the daily rate, you will calculate this. You take the yearly salary cost and you divide it by the yearly productive days. Either the productive days that we want, not the billable days that you probably have in your organization when it comes to commercial activities. Then for the salary cost, you can include all the costs, including social security contributions, as well as other statutory costs. You will get more guidance on that in the Annex 10, so you could consult this for that purpose. Then for the productive days, normally you take all the days in a year minus the weekends, minus the holidays, and minus the illness. And then you just divide the salary cost and the productive days and you have the daily rate. Of course, take into account if you have a project that will take 5, 6 or more years, that there is also the inflation that you will have to calculate in. So then you may have to raise a bit the rate. For public bodies, well, only costs with regard to activities that would not have been carried out if the project would not have been undertaken can be included. So therefore, we also have this 2% rule that we will check. So the sum of the public body contributions must exceed by at least 2% of the salary cost of non-additional staff. Non-additional staff is in fact staff that is already in place before the start of the project or the signature of the grant agreement. All the other staff can be considered as additional. Then make also sure that the person is specifically assigned to the project or that there is some tracing of that. We also want to point out that a contract renewal is not the same thing as a contract reassignment. A contract renewal is a temporary contract that has been extended. So in that case, we are talking about additional staff if the contract is extended for the purpose of the LIFE project. A contract renewal is not the same as the reassignment because the reassignment is on a contract that is already in place and you just change tasks. So, and that is not necessarily then additional staff. This would still be non-additional staff if this contract was already in place. Then we have the durable goods category. There we still have the general principle that you can only declare depreciated costs up to a limit. For equipment, this is maximum 50% of the total purchase cost. For infrastructure, it is 25%. We have some exceptions to this rule, especially for prototypes. These are, of course, equipment that is specifically created for the project. It's not available as a serial product and you cannot commercialize it during the period of the grant agreement, of course. Then we have a novelty for most of the action grants, because before we already had it for action grants in the frame of nature and biodiversity and for integrated projects. And now we also apply it for all beneficiaries, so no longer only for non-commercial and for public beneficiaries. So beneficiaries should assign during and after the end of the project the durable goods definitely and exclusively to the same objectives and the purpose foreseen by the project for the whole economic life of the good. If this is done, you can charge 100% of the purchase cost. So then there is no need for the depreciation. We have also the subcontracting and the external assistance where we often encounter some issues. So please note that you can only use this type of cost for a limited part of your project. We say normally 35% unless it is justified. Of course, it should be necessary for the implementation, but this goes without saying. And then in principle, we would not allow it for project management unless it is justified, and then it can not be for the entire project management, and for certain costs or for certain activities that are related to the coordinating beneficiary, it is just impossible to use subcontracting, especially, for example, for the receipt of the funds from the European Commission, from the agency, also for being the contact in case of reporting and so on. You need to act with your own staff. Of course, if you don't have staff in place, you still have this option for contracting a natural person, and then the costs are under staff costs and you avoid the subcontracting. Other costs, this category, there we also have a novelty this year because we have the financial support. These costs will have to be declared there if you want to use it. They were already available for integrated projects in the past, where the maximum amount for the project was 100,000 euro. Now it has been raised to 200,000 euro, and for every instance, maximum 60,000 euro. For the traditional projects, the normal projects, there you can have 100,000 euro for the project, and you can have then 20,000 euro per instance. It are the so-called cascading grants. Then other costs, financial guarantees. You don't need to budget these upfront because the number of participants that would be required to submit a financial guarantee, the coordinators, of course, in case they are private and they don't have enough financial viability, they are so few that I would not recommend to include it. If you want to be sure, if you might need a guarantee, then I would suggest that you go to the evaluation guidelines and you look at the financial evaluation section, where you can find the different criteria that we apply to mention whether a coordinator will have to supply a guarantee or not. So you could already do the check yourself if you want. Then, of course, we have the audit certificate, which is not required for everybody. It's mainly for those beneficiaries that will have a union contribution of at least 750,000 euros. So it's not on project level, it's on beneficiary level. Then there are also translation costs, costs for dissemination material, and so on. So you can also see in the guide and in the Annex 10 for further information on that. The overheads, these are the indirect costs, so that are costs that in your accounting system are not directly attributed to the project. We apply there a flat rate of maximum 7% of the total direct eligible cost, but we exclude for that amount the land purchase, long-term lease, and one-off compensations. And that it is also a maximum per beneficiary. So it's not the 7% is not for the project, but it is per beneficiary. And of course, you will have to apply a fair share. So it's not always 7%. This is depending, of course, on the project. For example, with a project where you have a huge amount of infrastructure, the percentage of indirect costs might be less. When you award contracts, which of course include profit, because suppliers work with a certain profit margin, you will have to make sure that you tender and that the tender that you choose offers the best value for money or the lowest price, and that there is no conflict of interest. So we will ask you as well in some of the F forms to include the procedure that you would select for the tendering that you will do. Of course, for public bodies, it's very easy. You just take the public procurement rules. For private entities, you will have to use the internal rules of your organization. In case they are not available, then if you would get a grant, of course, you could set up a procedure, because it makes it very easy. Or if you cannot do that, then just make sure that there is competition between suppliers. Then, what are the frequent encountered issues? Already at financial selection, when we do the financial viability check, we often see that beneficiaries, coordinators, private coordinators, for which the amount that they request union contribution is more than 750,000 euro for the project, that they don't include the audited accounts. It means the balance sheet and the profit and loss account as approved by an external auditor. So watch out for that you don't forget this. And then for the applicants that are not required by law to have these accounts verified, then there is a self-declaration document that can be completed. We also have the sole traders, which are the legal entities that are owned and run by an individual. And there is no legal distinction between the owner and the business. So there is no distinction between the own assets and the assets of the building. Those entities are in fact considered to be natural persons, and natural persons are not eligible for participation in our calls. They can, however, act as staff if they sign a consultancy agreement or are engaged under a civil contract. Then we have the affiliated entities, and we can accept those also again for private beneficiaries. We accept them either the mother or the daughter companies. Both can act as beneficiary in the grant agreement and the other one as the so-called affiliate. We also accept associations and their members, the same rules. Then make sure that you clearly identify them. So especially also in the different cost items include the abbreviation, the acronym of the affiliates. So we are clear that this belongs to the cost of the beneficiary, but we see also the affiliates that will work, because we will have, if you get the grant, of course, we will have to name them in the grant agreement, and we need to make sure we spot them in your proposal. Then they need to comply with the eligibility and the non-exclusion criteria which apply to the applicants. So it are the same. So also an affiliate or a member of an association cannot be a natural person. You should in any case then demonstrate their legal or their capital link, and then also the membership if we are speaking about associations. Of course, the beneficiaries themselves will remain responsible for the affiliate and for their costs. So in case an affiliate would have an important role in the project, then please consider to put them as an associated beneficiary in the grant agreement or in the project. And then just a few reminders. Be clear and precise when you enter your applications, because applications are only evaluated on what is submitted. So we're not going to check the potential of an idea. Read the documents that can help you to draft your proposal and to put your budget together. Also read about and talk to ongoing projects, because they are very valuable and you will get a better idea. So you can check the live database on the funded projects, and also start early. Don't wait the last minute for entering your proposal. Then I thank you. And then later on, there will be questions and answers. I will come back to you.
Thanks, Anne. It was intense, but also really popular, and we will know soon with the answer session. But for now, let's take a break. While we work on all your questions, we divide them in categories and identify those with the most likes. You can sit back and relax, make yourself a cup of coffee, take a tour of your living room, open the window, and enjoy some of the best live moments, specially selected for you from our communication team. Enjoy live, and see you back in 15 minutes.
Ready to turn ideas into actions? Looking to co-fund an innovative project to conserve our natural surroundings, protect the environment, or take action against climate change? LIFE is supporting organizations across Europe, public or private, large or small. It's easy to apply, so it's never been simpler to achieve your goals and make the world a better place.
Did you see this small stream? It seems innocuous, and really now it is, but in nature, things change rapidly. And something that was never dangerous before can suddenly transform into a catastrophe that violently impacts everyone, particularly small and medium-sized enterprises. 90% of those of which are obliged to suspend production fail within 1 year. But in the face of extraordinary weather events such as this one, luckily there is another way, which is called risk control. This is why the Life DERIS project has developed a 7-point index to help companies reduce their vulnerability, thanks to a series of fundamental actions so they won't be caught unprepared and can increase their resilience. A process activated thanks to collaboration between the public administration and businesses and the knowledge made available by DERIS. There is no better solution to the effects of climate change than prevention. That's why DERIS has created an online tool that helps small and medium-sized enterprises to understand, assess, prevent and manage risks. Thus, each business is capable of defining concrete actions to limit the damages caused by extraordinary weather events. But a company cannot reduce all risks, and it cannot do it alone because it is part of a community with its own characteristics. Therefore, this is a process carried out thanks to the synergy between the public administration and entrepreneurs so as to provide useful knowledge and instruments to increase the security of the community. Do you remember how this story started? And here we are again, looking at an opportunity. And now the choice is in your hands. The future of our communities depends on working together. The future of businesses depends on the capacity to adapt. DERIS. The climate changes. Reduce your risks.
Air conditioners are our best allies to defeat summer heating, and they can help us to warm our homes in the wintertime. So, how to reconcile the need for heating and cooling houses with the need to protect the environment in which we live? In 2017, Life Zero GWP was born just to satisfy that need. A LIFE program-funded project that aims to create a heat pump called Double Duct that uses a propane gas natural refrigerant with almost near to zero global warming potential. The new Double Duct technology will be the first air pump charged with natural refrigerant propane that can be considered an excellent alternative to traditional solutions based on hydrofluorocarbons in small hermetic systems, like residential air conditioners. The double duct will be simple, so it will be easily installed even by inexperienced operators. Safe, because it will use natural refrigerant in an airtight circuit. And efficient, without CO2 emissions. It will be the best solution for decarb heating and cooling in houses, and the best solution for urban requalification, thanks to the absence of any external units. The product will be tested in several European countries. The goal of Life Zero GWP project is to demonstrate the technical feasibility, full safety, and commercial viability of the product with unprecedented environmental performance.
Every year, Europeans do around 36 billion loads of washing. Most loads contain synthetic clothes, releasing millions of non-degradable fibers into the wastewater. Most of these fibers slip undetected through water treatment plants and out to the sea. Acrylic, nylon, and polyester are the major culprits. One polyester fleece jacket sheds almost 1 million fibers per wash. An acrylic scarf, 300,000 fibers. Nylon socks, 136,000 fibers. Fish mistake these fibers for plankton. 65% of the shrimp in the North Sea contain synthetic fibers. These shrimp end up on our plates. You can reduce the amount of fibers you shed. Fill up your washing machine to the max. Use washing liquid instead of powder. Use a fabric softener and wash at a low temperature. But this is just the start. Help the Mermaids Project find new long-term solutions to stop the pollution of our oceans. Visit lifemermaids.eu to help.
One of the rarest birds worldwide, the northern bald ibis. 400 years ago, the species became eradicated in Central Europe. A European Life project helps them to return. The Waltrop team has found ways to reintroduce them as migrating birds. Chicks hatched in zoos are hand-raised by foster parents and are accustomed to an ultralight aircraft. In autumn, they follow the aircraft with their foster parents sitting in it to their wintering area in Tuscany. Later, they return as sexually mature birds to the breeding area in the northern foothills of the Alps in order to breed. They are the founders of a new migrating northern bald ibis population. In late summer, the offspring follows the experienced migrating birds to the south, without any human help. The project proves to be successful. A growing number of northern bald ibis migrate between breeding area and wintering area on their own. The whereabouts of the freely flying birds are well known. Every animal carries a GPS transmitter on its back, which regularly transmits the current position. Thus, every bird can be monitored closely during migration. The monitoring made it also possible to convict a poacher who had shot 2 northern bald ibis. With the help of an app, which was exclusively designed for this purpose, people interested in the northern bald ibis can track the current position of the animals and thus follow their flyway. The app is also useful for finding and watching the birds on site. Northern bald ibis are not very shy and totally harmless. They are hamerophiles that mainly feed on worms and grubs. It's up to us all to give the northern bald ibis a second chance in Europe.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice break, enjoying life moments and liking your favorite questions on Slido. I'm here back with today's panelist and with Astrid Geiger. She's the head of sector for climate action. She joined us in case you have any question on the climate action call, on close to market project, and on our NGO operating grants. As said, this is now our answering session, and we have already more than 400 questions. So I would ask Sebastian in the back office to show us the Slido here. An overview of the first round of questions that we have identified. So let's wait for that to happen, and then we will start answering them. Technologies need some time, even in 2020, but here you are. Yes. So I will ask first, let's see what we have there. 229 people actually wants to know, I guess from Angelo, if he could explain the relations synergies between LIFE and the new Green Deal opportunities. Angelo, that's for you.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Again, it's the question is definitely a very good question, but I will give you a sort of more political reply. So the first thing that we have to be aware is that the Green Deal has at least 7 different chapters of or axes of work. And in reality, the LIFE program may contribute and does contribute in reality almost to every one of those. Just to mention a few: biodiversity, circular economy, climate change, and many others. So the connection between the two is rather obvious and straightforward. If we're talking about the mechanics in itself, so joining forces between different funding opportunities under the Green Deal and LIFE, we have not developed any specific tool in that direction, but it is always possible for applicants to explore the mixing up of the various streams of financing. Typically, you can use loans together with grants. This applies to every program, not only LIFE, in connection to a single project. This is absolutely possible. So please be welcome if you want to explore this kind of mixing up cards.
Thanks, Angelo. I'd say that the next question there is for Fabio Leone. How many of the projects passing the concept stage pass the detailed project stage and become eligible for funding?
Okay, yes, I think I've introduced this element into my presentation. I can repeat. There are, of course, for the 2-stage approach, we have a first stage. We have between 15, the minimum is 15% passing to the second stage to a maximum of 30%. It really depends on the specific priority area. For example, for governance and information, we have around 50% from first stage to second stage. Then we have, if you look at nature and biodiversity and climate, we go up even to 30 to 35%. From the climate, please be aware, it's 1 stage. And then finally, the environment and governance, we have around 20% success rate from stage 1 to stage 2. Now, if we move to the stage 2, how many of them they will be actually financed? Well, it's between 40 to 50%. So it's 1 out of 2, a bit less. This is more or less the chances that you have when applying.
Okay, thanks, Fabio. Then we go for the next one. That's for Anne Vermalen. She was the last one giving the presentation today, and there are quite a few financial questions for her. So this is if the beneficiary is the private one, how much should be its percentage contribution? Anne.
Yes, well, in fact, there is no difference between public and private beneficiaries. So, in fact, EASMO, the Commission, they will contribute up to the maximum allowed for the strength. So it's 55, 60, or 75%. And the rest will, of course, need to be co-financed by the other beneficiaries. It can also be by co-financing coming from third parties. The only requirement that is there is that every beneficiary at least contributes with €1. So there is no specific percentage for the type of beneficiary.
Thank you, Anne. And then we have 20 people who wants to know what Vasiliki wants to know, and this is a question for Maya. Integrated projects require compulsory mobilization of at least another funding source for complementary activities. Which are in practice these sources?
Yes, indeed, it's true that integrated projects require compulsory mobilization of at least one funding source for complementary activities. And in reality, they can come from public sources or private sources. So it can be any sort of private funding. It can be also national or regional funding, as well as other EU funds.
Thanks, Maya. And here we have a question for Astrid. Mm-hmm. So, Astrid, can large companies benefit from life support?
Yes, this could be a very short answer, yes. But I elaborate a little bit more. So LIFE is a rather flexible program, as you know. So any legal entity that is established in the EU and also the UK can apply for funding from life support. And coming back to the private sector, of course, we have, as Angelo mentioned this morning, emphasize that we are also looking for the smaller ones, the startup companies in this case, and it would be nice if they could be taken on board among the consortium. so that they are taken as a partner, because for startups it's more difficult to be coordinating a project. But yes, large companies also can receive support.
Thank you, Astrid. We still have 3 questions there to go before we move to the very, very top question. So we have a question from Francisca. That's for Angelo, I'd say. If project activities have to be postponed due to the pandemic, can the overall project time frame be extended?
Yes, Francisca, absolutely. Not only it's a positive reply, but we have already foreseen it in our frequently asked question. That was probably the most evident impact that the crisis due to COVID would have had on our project, but it was confirmed thanks to a questionnaire to which almost 800 ongoing beneficiaries replied, saying that indeed this is the most frequent problem they are facing. We have not, for the moment, identified a preset extension or any other standard mechanism, because every project will suffer in a different way due to the COVID crisis. And so we will take stock of every project needs in terms of time. At the time, we can revert to some sort of normality, let's say, and then we will work case by case, and we will certainly be flexible.
Thanks, Angelo. We have a question on climate change adaptation, which I would like to ask to Astrid. Do traditional climate change adaptation projects have to integrate innovative measures, or they could refer solely to implementing existing approaches?
Yeah, within climate change adaptation and also mitigation, we don't only have demonstration and pilot projects, but we also have the best practice projects, so the possibility is there.
Yes. Thanks, Astrid. And talking about climate change adaptation, what we should definitely remind to everybody that is watching here and is interested in the topic, there will be a specific dedicated webinar on the 12th of May. You can find all the information on the live website. You can subscribe and ask all the questions you have there after the presentation given by our climate change experts. So let's go for the last question of this round. That's nature. I'd ask it to Maya. Our project works on migratory birds. Can we include a partner from Egypt along the same flyway? What do we have to explain?
That's a very good question, actually very relevant for migratory species. So actually for actions implemented outside the EU, you should provide details on why such actions are necessary to achieve EU environmental objectives, and how you will ensure the effectiveness of the interventions carried out outside the EU and outside the territories of the member states in order to achieve the objectives of your project.
Thanks, Maya. And now I will ask Nadia in our back office to switch the top question. What are the most voted right now? Can we do that? Yes. So the first one, main novelties of the Life Call for Proposal 2020. That's what we have been talking about this morning. This was probably a question from last night. So if you missed that, just rewatch this recorded webinar or take the slides from the presentation, which will be on the website, because Angelo talked extensively about this. And I would say we go to the next top question. So and that's for Angelo again. Does the co-funding need to be guaranteed and secured prior to live application, or can this be confirmed later? Angelo.
Yes, so co-funding does not need to be guaranteed at the time of the live application, but it will need to be confirmed at the stage of the signature of the grant agreement, meaning that if your proposal is successful throughout the selection process, before we sign the grant agreement, we want to see that the co-founders of your project, especially those that are providing a sizable amount of the co-founding, do indeed confirm their willingness to support the project. We may, in certain cases, when really it's difficult to obtain a final confirmation because there are other processes and procedures for the co-founders in the way, we may accept that a certain co-founding is not confirmed, but this only if this is a limited amount overall the budget of the project. So we are risk takers, but we don't want to risk signing a grant where we fix a certain amount of money in a project that largely depends from co-funding outside, for which there is hardly any whatsoever confirmation. I think that it's quite normal from our side, but it would be also wise from the side of the applicants not to engage in a project that has such a high risk associated. I hope it's clear.
Yes, thanks, Angelo, but we stay with you for the next question, because 116 people want to know how many beneficiaries are generally involved in a LIFE project and what is the average budget?
So there are average, as in every statistics, we're more than 5,000 projects, so we can drive average out of that. The average size of a project in budgetary terms is in the areas between 1 and 2 million euros, depending from the priority areas. But average don't really tell a story. We have projects which still today are in the areas of 500, 600,000 euros total cost. Few, but they do exist. So there's the extreme on the low side, and we have projects that exceed 20, 25 million euros EC financing on the other extreme of the distribution. So you can see the budget has to be designed in view of your ambition, your capacity, and the structure of the project and the problem that you want to address. Same goes for beneficiaries. Normally, most of our projects are multi-beneficiary, but this only depends from your approach. We have a sizable share of our projects, still 15-20%, that are mono-beneficiary. But we have projects with 60 beneficiaries in one single project. So again, design your project in size and number and duration, number of beneficiaries, in the way that it is most appropriate to address the problem you want to solve within the remits of your capacity.
Thanks, Angelo. Maya, you explained so well how the application works, but there are some people who are really a bit confused about how to qualify for transnational, and 112 of them want to know if there is a minimum number of countries needed for a project to qualify as transnational. Does a cross-border consortium qualify as transnational?
Yes, it does. In fact, what is very important when considering a transnational project is, or partners joining from different member states joining forces, is the EU added value of such an approach. So in fact, such an approach has to deliver, transnational approach has to deliver benefits and has to contribute to the implementation of the objectives of the project, either in one of the member states or both that are concerned by the transnational approach. We can even imagine a project that has only partners from one member state, but the range and the activities of this project are implemented across several member states. And in that case, we can also consider a transnational value of such project.
Okay, thanks a lot, Maya. And now we have one of the classic question of life. That seems difficult for a lot of people, but it's always clear to Anne. So Anne, what is the 2% rule for public bodies?
Okay, so in fact, all the public entities that are part of the grant agreement, they will combined need to be financed at least 102% of the non-additional staff costs that they incur. So what are the non-additional staff costs? That is, in fact, the staff cost that is related to permanent or to temporary staff, which are already in place before the signing or the start of the grant agreement. So in fact, there is a novelty this year that also the co-funding that is received from third parties, which are public, will be taken into account. So before it was only the own funding of these public bodies, now also third-party public funding can be used.
Okay, thanks. Angelo, you want to add something on this?
Yeah, maybe Anne, we can already share the good news for next year. The 2% rule disappears. So
yes. The question will then also disappear.
Yes, but there we are talking about the call 2021 and where it will disappear, but we still want you to apply for the call 2020, even if there is the 2% rules, all the rest is really, really good there. So let's take the next one. That's for Fabio. Nikos and other 83 people would like to know, how does the 2020 Circular Economy Action Plan affect the thematic priorities, waste and resource efficiency and circular economy? We are going into policies here. Yeah.
Yeah, Nikos. Well, if you look at the LIFE priorities, which indeed have been fixed in 2018 for this programming period, you will see that the current LIFE thematic priorities are fully synergetic with the 2020 Circular Economy Action Plan. So, yeah, we're basically covering all the aspects of the Circular Economy Action Plan. Of course, if you want, the emphasis is moving from downstream to upstream in the latest Circular Economy Action Plan. This is fully compatible with the priorities of LIFE, so you're welcome to submit projects along those lines.
Thanks, Fabio. And we stay with you. What are the expected TRL for demonstration pilot projects?
Okay, well, depending on the definition of TRL, I think I'll better, instead of making numbers, to tell you the meaning. So, I mean, LIFE, it's quite flexible in terms of demonstration and pilot projects. Normally we can start from post-lab, let's say, so your first attempt into the building up of a prototype, up to the actual introduction to the market of the solution. So it's I mean, it's up to you. We have all sorts of projects, starting from developing prototype with the potential for uptake after the project end, or a project that goes from prototyping up to the market within the context of the project and within the duration of the project.
Thanks, Fabio. So here we come back to Angelo again. Can I submit an application without confirmed co-financing? Can I submit an application only with partners' own contribution?
Well, the first question, I think we have already replied in with the previous question, but yes, you can submit an application without confirmed co-financing. You have to identify in your proposal, nevertheless, if you foresee to have co-financing from third parties. If you are planning to apply for a first stage proposal and you don't know yet, you can foresee that you will bear the cost, your part of the matching funds by yourself. And later on at the second stage, when you see that the co-financers are showing up more seriously, you can foresee to include them. So you can change these aspects. Can I submit an application only with partners' own contribution? Of course, you can.
Thanks, Angelo. And here we have, I interpreted as a question for Fabio, which type of projects under the environment and resource efficiency stream are prioritized in the selection process?
If I understand well the question, I think first of all, you know, there are priority topics. These are highlighted in the application guide and in the multi-annual program. If you do submit a project under these priority topics, you get a bonus points. So all of those under the process of evaluation will get additional points. Well, to know which type of projects, then you should actually look at the priority areas to have an idea of the thematics that are covered by that.
Yes, thanks, Fabio. And this is actually a crucial point. We have guidelines for applicants and the documents for the call, which are very, very detailed. And you don't go out of it with a good proposal if you didn't do your homework well. So that's definitely the case. And now, this is a question for Angelo. All projects will be allowed to financially support local initiatives that might contribute to the project objective. What is considered as a local initiative?
So the first statement is not a question, it's correct. So all projects will be allowed within the limits that we have explained before. But what is considered as a local initiative will leave a large margin of flexibility in defining local initiative. We say local, but it doesn't require necessarily that it's physically connected to a local piece of land, if you want, like a village or whatever. It's local in the sense that it's very small, it's very punctual in time and possibly even in space. and therefore it cannot be supported directly as an action within the project in the format of an associated beneficiary. So it can be in the classical nature biodiversity area where this concept started evolving, but also in climate with Climate Pact. It has to be with engagements of the people in trying to change their behaviors or committing to a shift. It could deal with management of waste, where you have a lot of need of involvement of the population. At the end of the day, you need to identify a subject, which must be a legal entity or a certain typology of subjects. So legal entities, which could be groups of citizens, could be small non-profit organization, could be even profit organization, not necessarily only non-profit, that are willing to develop a rather small thing that will nevertheless contribute to the objective of the project. You define it, you define the objective of this kind of initiatives that you want to support, you define the mechanics that you want to follow in order to award these mini grants, and then off you go. And that's the beauty of the idea.
Thanks, Angelo. And we stay with you for the question from Maren, and there are 56 people who want to know if you could explain more in detail how the new feature for support to third parties works. Who can distribute, manage the project money, to whom and how?
So this is a follow-up question to the previous one. The beneficiaries, any of the beneficiaries in a project, so the coordinating beneficiary, meaning the applicant, or any associated beneficiary, what you would normally call in layman terms partners, can use this particular facility. It's not restricted to one or another, and they can therefore distribute and manage this money, which can be allocated to third parties initiative, and the whom and how, it's up to you to determine. Our advice: it has to be transparent, it has to be fair, it has to be traceable, but it has also to be simple. So don't design over demanding or over administrative type of mechanism, because then you might kill the beauty of the idea. It has to be simpler than what a live project is, because otherwise people would simply participate in full to a live project.
Okay, thanks, Angelo. And then, so this is from Maya. What, if anything at all, can we change in the composition of the partnership between the two submission stages?
Mm-hmm. In fact, we have a degree of flexibility between stage 1 and stage 2. It's important to note that our application system, e-proposal, will allow you to introduce almost any change you wish to your to the full proposal, to your project. However, what is important to bear in mind when you introduce changes is that you do not affect negatively the capacity of your consortium to implement the project that you have designed. So if you add or remove beneficiaries from the consortium, you have to take care to address this risk. Also, you can swap the roles, so the coordinating beneficiary can become associated beneficiary. But you have to bear in mind that we will look very carefully to evaluate whether the capacity to implement the project that you have designed has not decreased.
Thanks, Maya. And then we have Matteo addressing directly Anne. Anne, could you explain again what is the rule for equipment and the difference with regards to previous calls? As Mr. Sarti said, equipment are 100% eligible.
Yes, well, in fact, in the previous calls, we had the possibility for nature and for integrated projects that public entities and non-commercial entities could have their costs for equipment and infrastructure 100% recognized, and that they did not have to depreciate if they fulfill certain conditions. Now this possibility has been opened up to all the different strands and to all the different beneficiaries. So if they still use the goods during and after the project for the same objectives, and they will certify this at the final payment stage, then they can not depreciate their amounts, and they can claim the full purchase cost.
Thanks, Anne. Now we have basically 2 questions in a row for Maya. First one is, I would like to submit a Life 20 NAT project on connectivity, which requires line purchase outside the Natura 2000 network. Are these expenses eligible? Maya?
There's a number of rules that govern the possibility to purchase land in a live project. All these conditions are listed in our application guide. I think what is important to highlight in the context of this question is that any land purchase has to contribute to improving, maintaining, or restoring the integrity of Natura 2000 network. So that's the first element to consider. Another very important element to consider is the ability of the beneficiaries or other relevant authorities to ensure that the purchased land will be protected in the long term. So there has to be the security of the investment has to be guaranteed by adequate protection, legal protection measures.
Thank you. And now we switch from nature to how to apply and how to move from to the second stage application. That's still for Maya. We are a consortium working on a project idea but have not yet decided on the coordinator. Can we make a choice and change it in the second stage application?
Yes, there is a technical possibility in our application system to change the coordinators.
Yes, thanks, Maya. And now we go to Anne. Anne, does co-funding have to be provided by all partners in a consortium, or can one partner, private partner, provide the full co-funding? This you kind of partially answered already, but yeah.
Yes, so as already mentioned, every beneficiary in the grant agreement will have to co-fund for at least €1. So the rest can be decided between the other beneficiaries.
Okay, thanks, Anne. So this is for, I'll ask this to Angelo. Can an organization submit more than one project to be funded?
Yes, you can. Measure well your strengths and forces, because if you submit more than one project and you are very good, or let's say very lucky, depends from which perspective you want to look at things, they might all pass. And if they're all financed, then you will have to implement them. And obviously there is beauty in success, but there is also then responsibility stemming out from it. So.
Exactly, useful to do a good cost and benefits analysis there on where to put your resources, basically. And the next one is for Anne. Are costs of consultant assistant in preparation of project application eligible under Life 2020?
No, in fact, they are not, because none of the costs that are incurred before the start of the project are eligible.
Yes, even me, I knew the answer to that. So. And now we have a question for Angelo. Is there a list of public authorities co-funding partners in life projects in their country? For example, the Romanian Ministry of Environment, Water and Forest.
No, we don't have such a list, either because it would be unfortunately rather sort of limited, or because it's very sort of dynamic. Nevertheless, yes, there are some public authorities, whether regional or national, that are providing a co-funding for projects. The best way to get hold of this kind of information is to contact your national contact points, for which a list indeed exists.
Exactly. And now, Xavier Sevillano and 27 others would like to know, I guess from Fabio, if regarding participation of startups with larger companies, must these companies be the product seller, or maybe other collaborators along the value chain?
Xavier, I mean, yes, I mean, they can be the product seller as other collaborators along the value chain. I think this is perfectly fine. It really depends on the project and on the setup of the project. it's difficult to answer. Generically answering, yes, it's possible. Then you have to see the context of the specific project.
Thanks, Fabio. And now I would say that we go to Angelo. And the 26 people that want to know on what grounds could the transnational approach be evident? Are there any specific topics already identified as having a more prominent transnational character?
Unless I'm wrong, there might be some connection with the transnationality element in one or the other of our topics or priorities, but I don't remember by heart. So you should double check, because the list of our priorities is very long and the text quite rich. But if there is nothing as such, there is no, let's say, preset subject or topic for which indeed we find that transnationality is more prominent than in others. Our logic is very common sense. You have a problem. If the problem has a transnational nature in terms of the impact of the problem or the solution to the problem, then you design a transnational project. So there is no preset number of countries that have to participate in a given project, and we still have a very large number of projects that are either national or even very local, and they are still very good projects. Just as we have quite a bunch of transnational projects, because we do have indeed a special eye to these projects that are very successful just as well. So we look at it from a European perspective, and it's this transnationality element is more, do you really need to cooperate between one side of the mountain and the other side, one side of the lake and the other lake, and the other side, and so on. That's if yes. The reply is yes, then go for transnationality.
Thanks, Angelo. The next question is also for you, but before I ask you that, I just want to remind everybody that you can still live the questions, because what we are doing now is we are going through your top questions. And if there is any that you think you're really interested in, you can still like that. That's just a reminder. And now that's for Angelo from UMIT, Ture. Are non-profit institutions, for example, universities, eligible as beneficiary? If yes, what is the funding rate for them?
Yes, to the first question, definitely all the legal entities that are active in one of the fields covered by LIFE, they can apply for LIFE and they could be eligible. The funding rate, I think there was a reply already given by Anne. It's really, you decided within the remit of your partnership. There are partnerships where you have, let's say, let's put it in those terms, rich partners and less rich partners, and they can decide that they share the funding that they receive, for example, from us at different rates. That's perfectly normal. There are other projects that receive, let's say, 60% of funding from us, and they apply 60% across all the partners at equal terms. So everyone is happy in the same way. As long as none of the partners, the associated beneficiaries, makes a profit, and as long as every single beneficiary does bear at least one famous euro in terms of cost that they for the action that they are responsible for. Obviously, this €1 is a symbolic element. If you come with a proposal where you say, I'll put €1, we will probably not be so happy about the symbolism of your own exposure, if you want. But apart from this, you can decide whatever you want in your partnership.
Okay, thanks a lot, Angelo. Some of you might have realized that the questions are changing because all of a sudden we have a replication question which is winning towards the others. That's for Fabio. About replication, it is needed to carry out a replication within the project time.
No, not necessarily. Granted that during the lifetime of the project, you build a solid strategy to replicate afterwards, so after the end of the project. Of course, in a sort of rainbow of projects that we receive, we receive different kind of ambition. Indeed, a perfect project would be a project that does implement the solutions and then replicate this solution within the project time across different sectors, different countries, also helping to duplicate or triplicate the kind of environmental benefits. But per se, there is no obligation to have replication within the project time.
Okay, thanks, Fabio. We have two budget questions which are fighting against each other. It's quite funny to watch. I'll take this and I'll ask Nadia to pin it before it goes down again. Is there a minimum budget for non-profit organization, Angelo? The answer is fast.
No.
Exactly. So they can relax, and we can go to the next question, which is for Fabio. Fabio, can you propose a budget with up to 45% of external costs if we justify that work cannot be done by own personnel?
This probably is more suitable for a combination of different colleagues. I mean, from the environment point of view, we have, of course, there is the possibility to justify this 45%, but I mean, it's really on an exceptional basis. I think there is an indication that they shouldn't go along more than 35%. Especially because sort of all the financings that we channel to the coordinator, to the project, are sort of then redirected in a sort of a third-party type of financing. What we also recommend when you have a substantial amount of external cost that you plan to do, think about if this can be actually internalized in the project. So you actually take the expertise or from the outside into the project when this size of amounts are significant. I don't know if the others wants to add something else for their areas.
I mean, I could add, maybe I found the last point you added very, very good, because it's also a bit about the long life of the project. So we would like that after the project, the actions continue and that the project is sustainable in this way. And if you have integrated this within your consortium, I think there is a bigger chance for that.
Okay. Thanks, Astrid. Nice teamwork on this one. And from Nadia in the back office with selecting and assigning the question, our magic Nadia, thanks a lot. And now we go to the next question about it's about the co-financing, and this is for Anne. Mercedes Munoz would like to know if can the co-financing be different internally between partners? Example, partner 1, 40%, partner 2, 70%, total co-financing 60%.
Well, I think that the question has just been answered already by Angelo. So indeed, partners can have a different contribution as long as the total co-financing that they put into the project matches the total cost and the contribution that has not been taken on board by the European Union. So the rest has to be co-financed by the partners, but they can decide between themselves.
Okay, thanks a lot, Anne. And then now we really go to current and policies. And I ask Angelo to answer this. So could you explain the relation synergies between LIFE, the new Green Deal opportunities under H2020? So the New Horizon Europe, actually, then.
These are the top questions. The only thing I can tell you that we've done, let's say in the back office, with our colleagues dealing with Horizon 2020 for this call related to the Green Deal, we have provided intelligence in order to make sure that the topics that they would address in this call would be really as much as possible synergic or complementary and not overlapping with the possible type of projects that we would finance under the usual call. So let's say we have worked more on this side of the story, and we have not really had the possibility, in terms of also of time available, to develop a mechanism where we would explicitly search for synergies and relations between Horizon and LIFE in the format of projects that really connect the two things. Still, under our own call, you know that there is an explicit reference and even a scoring mechanism for projects that use results from ongoing or past Horizon projects. We are planning in the next LIFE edition to be more explicit and more, let's say, upfront on this kind of issues. But this is what we have done so far.
Thanks, Angelo. But we stay with you because 34 people would like to know new regulations stating projects can financially support small local initiatives. How much own contribution from partner is expected in this?
Again, to be defined within the project, I can easily imagine that, say, in a project with 3 partners, one of the partners is the one that is responsible maybe for this local initiative because they are part, let's say, of the communication strategy, and this particular partner is in charge of the communication, and that partner will be the one that enter into a contract, a grant mechanism with these local groups or entities. And then it is up to the partnership to decide whether they want to share the burden for that or not. Normally, if that partner is the one that is responsible for that grant, it will appear as part of the costs of that particular partner. Then later on, we will reimburse the project as such, and then the money will be redistributed according to the partnership agreements that the people have set up. Beware that obviously the fact that we co-finance your project, say 60%, we don't discriminate between one cost or another, so we treat everything equally. But you can decide within your project that that particular grant that you provide to local initiative could cover 100% of the cost of the final recipient. So you don't need to apply the same level of co-financing that we apply to your project to the project that you finance in turn. So that's also a nice thing to know.
Okay, thanks, Angelo. The next one, I'll ask you to Fabio. Are R&D activities eligible in live calls? And which TRL? What is the links difference between live and Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, especially in the partnership?
Okay, it's a composite question. The second
Yes.
part a bit difficult to address. For the first part, are the R&D activities eligible? First of all, a reminder, so the LIFE does not support purely research and development project. However, there could be within the context of LIFE activities a minor part, a relative part, minor part of the project that could be dedicated to research and development activities, but it shouldn't be the focus of the project. It can be a certain cost, but not should be the majority of the project focus. So we are not a research and development program. What is the link differences? Well, H2020 Horizon Europe. There we need to move a bit on the constituency, on the type of schemes implemented. I don't know, for example, different type of overheads, the no obligation, the partnership. There are a certain number of differences between LIFE and the H2020. I assume that H2020 would support purely research and development type of projects, for example. I don't know if others have more to say, but it's.
Anyone wants to add something?
Okay.
No? So we had a flip on the top question. I would ask this to Anne. I have the feeling that we gave a lot of these answers already. And add what you think is relevant. How would the consortium justify the cost of the supported third parties? Should they make timesheets, send us invoices? What should they do? 30 people want to know this.
Okay, so in fact, in principle, the participant who will give the financial support will have somewhere in place a contract with the third party. And in the contract, it will be specified on the basis of what, that they will get the support. So it will be the underlying documentation that they agree in their contract that will have to be supplied. For example, if they foresee lump sums based on after certain activities are carried out, and of course, when they receive the lump sum against maybe an invoice or so, then the invoice will serve as a supporting document. If they require timesheets, then if this will be an underlying supporting document, then we will require the same. So it will depend on what they agree.
Maybe
Thanks, Anne.
Maybe to refer back to what Angelo has already said, that This is meant to be like a simple process, so don't make it more complicated than the usual reporting that we have also for life, because here we are talking about the very small initiatives, and it shouldn't become a bureaucratic big administration.
Yes, thanks, Anne. Thanks, Astrid. Your image was frozen. This happens, but your voice came clearly and your add-on was very good. Thanks a lot. So now we can go to Angelo, because we have this COVID-19 related question. Is there a bonus in scoring for projects that combine environmental protection with the struggle with COVID-19 crisis? It's a wish more than a question, maybe.
Well, if I have to reply from the legal administrative side, the reply is quite clear, no. If I have to reply from the heart, the reply is also quite clear. It would be nice. So we have stimulated applicants to think in those terms. I mean, there are a lot of actions that could help us in either during this crisis, if the crisis is going to extend very, very long, or to manage future pandemics that unfortunately we might not exclude. So if you think in those terms, you think about all the medical equipment that is produced, discarded, that this requires for waste management. If you think about the production of tools, garments, protection elements that we might need during pandemics, this could be produced in a more circular economy effective way. If you think about the many possibilities that you have. So I cannot promise you that we will look at your project with an eye that is different from the others, but certainly I think it would be a bonus in terms of selling point for your project to put in light this kind of elements.
Okay, thanks, Angelo. Now I have a question which is not for the call 2020, but I'm sure that people watching us are actually interested in this as well. I'll ask it to Fabio. When will the outcome of the 2019 call be known, approximately?
Yeah, I mean, very soon, actually. So expect some news in May, the beginning of May, more or less, mid-May, let's say. You should be informed.
Thanks. So Valerio Bandini would like to ask, I guess, to Anne, if she could explain better the subcontracting rules. Project management is allowed in terms of subcontracting?
Well, the general subcontracting rules are, of course, that the costs need to fit with the eligibility criteria of the grant agreement. The subcontract should also be awarded taking into account value for money and no conflict of interest. It can only cover a part of the tasks, as already mentioned, which is normally limited to 35%, except if a higher level is justified. And it depends also a little bit on the nature of the project and what is necessary, of course, for the implementation. Can project management be subcontracted? I would say in principle not fully, because certain tasks are reserved for the project coordinator. Especially receiving the money, the contact with the EASME and so on should normally remain with the beneficiary itself. But certain parts of the project management could, of course, be done by a service provider.
Okay, thanks, Anne. We have kind of a question still for you with the 2% rule. How it is more flexible now. Is there anything you want to add to what you have already said?
Well, I think the flexibility is in the fact that before we only took into account the own contributions of the public entities to match the 102% of the non-additional staff costs. Now we will also take into account contributions from public third parties.
Yes, thanks. We go to the question from Giovanna that is addressed to Maya. I would say, does live programming allow public administration to buy or rent private areas belonging to the Natura 2000 network for their renaturalization and protection?
Yes, if those entities are live project beneficiaries. So please remember that the land must be purchased by one of the project beneficiaries, who is either a well-established private organization, for example, a nature conservation NGO, or a public body, but with a nature conservation responsibility. And the purchased land must remain in the ownership of that organization, of course, after the end of the project. And of course, the beneficiary who acquires land must demonstrate that they have a necessary capacity, competence, and experience to manage the purchased land for the nature conservation purposes.
Okay, thanks a lot, Maya. I will ask now Maya. Sorry, Angelo wants to add something. Once I'm not looking there. Angelo, please.
Yeah, you might remember in the introductory speeches that we mentioned again some of the novelties that we had already underlined the year before. So there is this element of private land conservation. I mean, there is no hard evidence statistics, but roughly we say that 50% of Natura 2000 is still in the hands of private owners. So we cannot buy it off all. This is simply impossible, even for any public authority's budget. So while we have evidence, especially from other countries, not so far away, that the mechanism whereby you get the private owners in the game of conserving and protecting their own lands is quite extensively used and very effective. So I would invite everyone, before getting in immediately in the idea, I buy the land, which is obviously the easiest and safest way to secure for the long term the conservation and the protection of the investment that you do, so the work that you do on that piece of land, to consider these other options that go through things that we call easements, land stewardship. There are several of these kind of mechanisms. And ask yourself whether really buying it off is always the right solution.
Yes. Thanks, Angelo and Maya, for this full reply. Now we stay with Angelo, 28 people. Is it possible to get financial support to write the application?
Not from us, as Anne already mentioned, any cost that you incur before the start of your project, once it's financed, for us it's ineligible, and obviously this covers all the work that you did to write your project proposal. The good news is that there has been in the past, and there are still today, some either member states or some region or even some foundation that do episodically or regularly support the cost for project preparation. An element that you might not be aware of is that, for example, it's not the last call, but it's the last call of last year that was done by the Civil Protection Mechanism of the European Union, contains financial support for small projects that may be pilot to larger projects like LIFE, in which you can also use the money to prepare your LIFE project application. So, but you have to go shopping around a little bit. I mean, there is no mechanism designed across the board to support this kind of costs.
Thank you, Angelo.
But we have the technical assistance. Sorry, I forgot.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
that's what I
for
wanted.
Projects, you can benefit instead from us from up to 100,000 euros of a project that will enable you and help you to prepare your integrated project proposal to be submitted to us. Yes, indeed. In the case of integrated project, we have a mechanism. I had completely forgotten. Sorry.
Great. The important thing is that we have a full reply at the end. So now we have the next question, and this is so things are changing very fast. Okay, so this is for Astrid. How LIFE can finance the work carried out by farmer on his farm to implement test of adaptation solution to climate change, risk of conflict, other funding? Astrid, you can start, please.
Yes, so you will find in the priority areas, in the work areas, you will find reference to sustainable farming practices and also to, adapting to climate change. And you can also get inspired by the type of project that we are funding already now on the website if you want to get some ideas there. So it's possible. I would like also to take this opportunity to raise your attention that the climate change part in LIFE has received a big budget increase from comparing to the last call. So we're really looking for proposals there. And if you are in particular interested in the CCA, climate change adaptation, Julia has already mentioned that there will be the webinar that we have in the afternoon on the 12th of May. So if you want to find more ideas, check whether your idea could fit, that could be a good opportunity.
Okay, I maybe want to add something with regard to the farmers, because it will all depend how they will participate in the project, because a lot of farmers are natural persons which are not allowed to participate as beneficiary. So then there are other type of possibilities. Of course, the subcontracting could be one, but maybe also the cascading rents.
Yes. Good add-on, Anne, and thanks, Astrid, for the overall reply. So we're going to the last question of today. This comes from Friends of the Earth Malta. And I'd like to ask it so that circularity is well defined when referred to goods, a lot less about services. Would it be useful to have a definition for circular services, at least for LIFE? Here I'm struggling between Fabio and Angelo. Is there anyone who wants to take this challenge? The last one?
I can start, and then I leave Angelo if. Well, it's actually a very interesting point. It's true. There is a lot of focus on goods, a bit less on circular services. Perfectly agree with the FOE from Malta. But I mean, a project that would focus on greening, or let's say reduce, avoid, prevent environmental impact in the services area, they are very welcome into LIFE program, and so there is not such a limitation that we will not finance projects to focus on those rather than on goods.
Yeah. Thanks, Fabio. We have basically our wrap for today. I'd like to ask Sebastian to bring back all our panelists in one view. Slado is there. Here we are. We made our best to reply to all priority questions, but don't worry, all the others, we will take stock of them and update our question and answer on the LIFE website. And for more detailed questions, to discuss your project ideas, remember that you can still book bilateral virtual meetings. There is more of us in the LIFE unit than these 6 you are seeing now. There are all the asthma experts that are ready to talk to you. There you can also contact the national contact points, or even other potential applicants with whom you would like to network. So this is from our side. Do not forget the climate change adaptation webinar on 12th of May. And let me now give the final word to Angelo for an important reminder. Angelo, the floor is yours. The floor is yours, but your mic is on or not? No? While we wait for Angelo to come back,
yeah,
I can already tell you that we...
Sorry.
Yeah, great.
I couldn't unmute my microphone. So the first announcement is the following. Now you have spent with us almost the whole morning. You've been very patient. More than 2,000 people have been following. 4,000 were registered. I mean, it's a super success, and it gives us a lot of motivation and hope for the outcome of all this. It shows also that COVID has not yet killed our anxiety for improving the way we live, and we have announced to you a number of novelties. All those that were already decided at the time of this webinar have been presented. You have asked questions. We have tried to clarify as much as we could, but you should be aware that these novelties, some of those were not yet published formally in the call itself, so they are not part of the package that you have found on the website, and there might be a few other 1 or 2 additional novelties that will come up. I can already mention to you that one of them could refer, for example, to in-kind contribution for volunteers. So quite an important piece of information. So my advice to you is that you have already most likely hooked to the call for proposal under LIFE for 2020. You might have already downloaded even the documents. I would advise you to stay tuned and to visit that site, let's say in 15 days from now. And you might then see an addendum or a corrigendum, as we call it in our jargon, which will encompass all these kind of novelties that we have decided and will formalize them. We might have to change partially the application guidelines, and we might also have to change some of the bits and pieces of the e-proposal mechanics to allow you to enter the information that might be required by one of these novelties. So don't start finalizing your homework on your proposal and on your budget before all the novelties are available and detailed for you. So don't stop looking at the website. What you've got from the website today is a lot, but there is a little bit more coming, and it's better that you are fully aware of that. We will keep, obviously, your national contact points aware, and we will publish it in the news. We will use all our social media to allow you to know that these kind of information are available, but do your due diligence and visit the website again. This is the first piece of information. The second piece of information is that we are starting here and there to see a bit of light out of the tunnel. So we might be going back to some sort of normality or pseudo-normality pretty soon. We all know that this global exercise will have a big toll on our economies and our social way of living and so on and so on. The usual thing that happens usually after a big economic crisis is that we tend to introvertedly look into the classic rescue recipes in economic terms. But you are very well aware that not that far away. I mean, just a few months ago, when the new college took its mandate, Madame von der Leyen announced a completely different, a largely different logic and priorities to redesign the way we run our economy, the way we live, and the way we behave in practically in the whole continent of Europe. I think we called it the Green Deal. I think the Green Deal is still very much alive. Politically, everyone is saying yes, yes, yes. But the risk is obviously always there that the yes then in practical terms turns into a me or even in a no. Now, you guys and girls behind the screen, with all your ideas for future life project, you might be a gulp of fresh air and a reconfirmation that the Green Deal is here to stay. So I really count on you. Project yourself in the future, even though I know it's difficult. We're all closed in our homes, but still keep on dreaming, keep on hoping. Co-financing is not there. We'll find ways. Don't worry. Give it a chance to your ideas. We are ready to support them and give you all the help that we can and play all the flexibility that we are allowed to play. And this will help us to turn at least a tiny little bit here and there of the Green Deal into reality. And I think this is probably the most important thing I wanted to deliver to you, apart from a big thank you for showing up so numerous, and a big thank you to all my colleagues and to Julia, Nadia, and all our consultants that are in the back office organizing this virtual event. Really super successful, and I think we have set a term of reference also for the European Commission in terms of how to run a multi-thousand participants event without moving a single person, and probably in terms of CO2 production, okay, we did consume a few electrons, this is true, but still. So really,
yes.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Angelo. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for watching us. Stay safe, have a nice day, enjoy the nice long weekend as much as you can. Follow us, keep in touch, and goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.
Good luck.
Goodbye to everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.